It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Hello, my viewers. Anybody know what that's from? Come on, that's old school YouTube right there. Dr. Zarkloff used to always start. Dr. Z. I used to watch a bunch of that guy's videos. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. I'm doing pretty good over here. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. As usual, got a couple things I want to talk about, and then I want to get to your guys' questions too. So if you guys do have questions, put them in the chat. Do me a favor and put them in caps lock, so that way it helps me to see them a little bit better. You know, sometimes these live streams have a lot of viewers and a lot of questions going on, so it can be a little difficult to you know, keep up with it all and stuff. So, and also, don't feel bad if I miss your question, if it seems like I'm avoiding it. Oftentimes I just don't see it or whatever, but you can feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com if I miss your question, and we'll try to get it on the next one too. So things are picking up a little bit here in Southern California. The workload is definitely starting to increase. We're getting a lot more service calls, and you know, it's good. It's cool. It's a little frustrating because just how it's all hitting the fan at once, you know. And I know that the first real heat wave that we get, like we've already hit 100, but that's not really a heat wave for us. When we hit about 110, 115, that'll be the start of our first heat waves, and just, you know, everything's going to hit the fan and it's going to go crazy. So, but you know, it's a little frustrating just because we're starting to see a lot of service calls. And like, for instance, I had a service technician that wanted to take some of the service calls this week. And so he was doing them. And like some of the, you know, a lot of the calls that he was getting was, you know, ice machine not working because it was Mother's Day, right? So he goes out there and it's dirty. Another ice machine service call. It was dirty. You know, it's just like everything's dirty because they haven't got back into their routine preventative maintenance programs yet. So it's just going to take a while. And we're going to get a lot of these crazy service calls, which is unfortunate because you no longer get a service call where you go out there and, oh, we just got to change a sensor and move on. You know, it's this machine is so dirty, I can't guarantee anything until I spend 4 to 6 hours cleaning it. And then I'll spend 2 hours diagnosing to find out X is bad or Y is bad, you know? And that's just what's going to happen as time goes on. You know, it is what it is. It's kind of a bummer, but you know, the customers, I get why they stopped their preventative maintenance programs. It was just going to take some time to, you know, build up some cash and stuff. You know, everybody's just basically in survival mode for the longest time. So, it is what it is. We're just along for the ride. But I will say, you know, I've been a little bit more upfront with the service calls. Like, for instance, just before the live stream started, one of my customers, they had sent a service call through. They use like an online dispatching service. So they sent a service call through earlier today saying they had an ice machine down. Okay, I saw the service call, no big deal. Well, 10 minutes ago, they changed the priority to emergency. You know, like, oh, they want it now. And it's like, it's an ice machine. No, I'm not going to prioritize an ice machine. Like, it's one thing if I've got nothing going on, but I'm not going to bend over backwards for an ice machine service call. They can simply order ice. Now, yes, they don't want to spend the money, but I'm not going to do that, you know? It'd be one thing if it was a walk-in freezer or an exhaust fan, something that would shut down the restaurant. Of course, I would be there in a heartbeat. And, you know, my service technician went and did ice machine service calls this last week. And I wasn't saying no to all the ice machine service calls. I'm just saying at the end of today, you know, I'm not going to bend over backwards and stop my live stream to go do an ice machine call. No, it's not going to happen. You know, they can wait on that kind of stuff. So it becomes a little bit difficult because you don't want to piss off the customers. You don't want to make them angry. But at the same time, you have to be able to have a normal life, you know, and outside of a real emergency service call, you got to know when to say no and like, hey, no, we can be out there tomorrow, you know, that kind of stuff. At least that's the way that I run it. I could be completely wrong in the way that I'm doing it. Trust me, in the past, I said yes to everything, and I've been getting better at saying no to certain things and not, you know, prioritizing all these restaurants over my family. I've been trying to step back a little bit and spend a little bit more time at home, that kind of stuff, you know, because I'm realizing that it's not just about money, because my sanity is really important too. And if I'm just working, yeah, I'm making great money, but it gets tiring over time, you know. So hello to everybody that's in here. I really appreciate you for coming in. All right. I'm going to get this off real quick. If you guys haven't already, please consider checking out my website, hvacrvideos.com. If you like anything you see, those are great ways to support the channel with hat purchases, shirt purchases, sweaters, beanies, all that good stuff. Feel free to check it out. Okay. So got a couple things I want to cover, but I first want to start off by talking about my two recent videos. Okay. Real simple. I had two air conditioning service call videos this last week. The first one was the office AC was not cooling. That was the one where the blower assembly blew up. That was kind of took me, you know, gave me a month, or, you know, kind of twisted me up a little bit because I went down a rabbit hole. Following diagnosis, you know, I wasn't incorrect, but I missed something really obvious, you know, and you guys saw it if you watched the video. If not, go check it out. The second video that I released this last week was the kitchen AC is not cooling, and that was a heat pump unit. And that one, I kind of suspected that, you know, we had maybe an overcharge or maybe a dirty condenser. Well, maybe an overcharge, you know, but come to find out, it was simply just a dirty condenser. So, when it comes to some of these ACs, you have to remember the basic sequence of operation. Now, I'm really comfortable with the carrier package units, okay? And I know that you can't necessarily always use the vital signs. For instance, the carrier package units, they have a discharge line service port. They do not have a liquid line service port. And there's a pretty big pressure drop across that condenser. So the subcooling number can be skewed if you rely just on the subcooling. You would always think that those units are overcharged because, you know, it would show really high subcooling every single time. So you have to know that stuff when you go in there to diagnose this equipment. You have to understand the sequence of operation and, you know, how the systems operate. So in that situation, I was a little reluctant to say that it was just an overcharge. I wanted to come back, do a thorough cleaning on the condenser, recover the charge, and come to find out the unit was actually undercharged. Okay, so it's interesting how it could look like an overcharge, but it ended up being an undercharge. It's interesting, you know, what happens when you actually just recover the charge and start from scratch. With that being said, I wanted to go ahead and cover this question that I had. And let's see, who asked it? Josh had asked me about recovering the charge out of an air conditioner, refrigerator, anything like that. And he was saying, with the prices of R22, what are my thoughts on recovering the refrigerant? Am I going to reuse that refrigerant, or am I always going to sell them new refrigerant? And the answer is, it really depends on the situation. If I go up to a system, especially if it's a single component refrigerant like R22, okay, there's not going to be fractionization issues. You know, you're not going to leak out this much of the vapor, whatever, okay? With R22, so long as I don't see or suspect any contamination issues, then typically I'm going to reuse the refrigerant, okay, to try to save the customer a couple bucks. So in the situation of the recent heat pump that I was working on, I went ahead and recovered the refrigerant out of both circuits, and I ended up finding out that the first stage was a little bit low, and I only charged them for the 3 or 4 pounds of new refrigerant that I used to top off the charge. I had enough to weigh in the factory charge on the second stage, you know, and the remainder on that first stage. So whenever possible, I try to reuse the refrigerant for sure, okay? Try to save them money as much as possible. R22 is expensive, but it's not just about R22. It's majority of any refrigerants. Now, if for the slightest reason I think there's any sort of contamination, I'm going to sell them new refrigerant. I'm not going to try to play that game. Now, in your question, Josh, you had also asked me, does the customer have an option in that matter, or do I just sell them one or the other? You know, it depends. If there's a contamination issue, I'm not even going to give them an option. My quote is going to be for new refrigerant, plain and simple, okay? You know, if the customer asks me why I'm selling them new refrigerant, then of course I'm going to explain everything, and I'm going to give them my opinion and go from there, okay? So that's typically how I address recovered refrigerant. I try to reuse it as much as possible, so long as it's not contaminated. So let's see. Did I already upload the video, the one that the AC kicked my butt? Yes, that is the video, Hugo, that I'm talking about right now. The video is titled, "The Kitchen AC is Not Cooling." That is the one. Oh, actually, no, it's not the kitchen AC. It's the office AC is not cooling. That's the one that kicked my butt that I talked about on my live stream the last time. Yes, and the thing that kicked my butt was I went down a rabbit hole thinking that we had a broken thermostat wire. I'm not going to spoil it, but you'll see once you watch the video what happened with that, okay? Why is it that when I'm using the pump sprayer, it sprays good? You tried yours, but it sprays weak. Ralph, Lauren, Castro. Ralph, when I use the pump sprayer, it sprays fine for me. I just pump it up. Now, Ralph, you also asked me about adding water to the venom packs. Okay, so let's talk about this. Refrigeration Technologies makes a highly, highly concentrated cleaner, and they put it in a new bag called a venom pack. Okay, the venom pack, being that it is highly concentrated, you have to add water every single time. Okay, you do not use that cleaner without adding water. You're just wasting cleaner essentially. Remember that bag, the venom pack, it comes like I think on one of them you get 8 gallons of cleaner out of that tiny bag, so you have to mix it appropriately. So when I use my little hand pump sprayer, I'll pour a little bit of cleaner in there and then the correct amount of water, and then pump it up and then spray it. Now remember, when you get Refrigeration Technologies' new pump sprayer, they have a brand new one that just came out. It has 2 different nozzles you can put on the end. One is for foaming, and then the other is for a direct spray. You can use it for whatever you want to use it for. So you want to make sure if you're doing coil cleaning that you use the foaming one, okay? But you always add water whenever you're using the venom pack, whether it be any of the venom packs they make. They make an all-purpose cleaner. They make an evaporator cleaner, they make a yellow condenser cleaner, and then they make a blue coil brightener. All of those need, they're concentrated, so you have to add water to all of them, okay? Let's see what else we got in here. Please take the hat off. No, I got to keep my hat on, man. My hair's a mess today because I've been wearing a hat all day long, so gotta wear the hat. All right, let's see what else we got going on in here. And yes, I am growing my hair out. A bunch of people commented about that. So I do things backwards in my area. I usually shave my head in the winter and then grow it out in the summer. Go figured. Why, I don't know. So, all right, let's see what else we got in here. What's the difference be a refrigerator cooling system and an AC other than what they are for? Mad Sexy asked that question. So essentially it's the temperature of the system. Okay. So refrigeration and air conditioning, what is the big difference? I mean, they both take a compressor. They both have a metering device of some sort, whether it be a fixed orifice metering device or an expansion valve, majority of the time expansion valves, okay? They both have a condenser. They both have an evaporator. They both have some sort of a temperature controller or a thermostat. So really, the only difference between refrigeration and air conditioning is the temperatures of which it maintains. That's it, okay? But as you start to drop the temperatures, you have to start considering defrost options, okay? In air conditioning, because typically we're maintaining about a 40-degree evaporator for the most part, okay? The temperatures are pretty consistent. Because the evaporator temperature is typically about 40 degrees, it's not below freezing, therefore, you typically don't have to worry about defrost too much. Now, there's some, excuse me, there's some weird situations where you might have to worry about some defrost strategies with air conditioning. For the most part, you don't have to, okay? When you get into refrigeration, whether it be medium temperature or low temperature, either way, you're gonna have to have a defrost strategy. So the main difference between air conditioning and refrigeration is really just the control package, right? The temperature controllers, the solenoid valves, the defrost circuit. That's really the only difference. It's the same concept. So for those of you that do air conditioning and think you could never do refrigeration or vice versa, you really can if you just open your eyes and think about it. There's really not a huge difference between air conditioning and refrigeration. Same concepts, you use the same troubleshooting methods, use your voltmeter, check these things. I mean, the control voltages might change. You know, in air conditioning, you typically will see 24 volts, but you know, in refrigeration, you're gonna, for the most part, see 120, 240, 480, something like that. Jose Rivera, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That was very, very awesome of you. That is amazing. The support is awesome that you guys give. So thank you so very much. If you guys haven't already, please smash the thumbs up button, thumbs down button, whatever you want to do. Any kind of interaction helps me out. So I'd really appreciate it. Okay. Why not go industrial rather than stay commercial? I've always done commercial refrigeration. I would never attempt to take my business industrial. I run my own business. It's easy for me to stay in my lane and stick to the commercial refrigeration, or it's actually more or less light commercial refrigeration, but I just kind of stay in my lane, keep my head down, and just powering through this. So yeah, I'm not really, I mean, I'm interested in industrial, I'm interested in supermarket stuff, but I would never take my business there. So let me see what else we got in here. Yeah, you know what? Yes. Bo said that there's defrost and heat pumps too. That's very true. There is. Okay. So let me see what else we got into here. Would I recommend a split type air conditioning? You know, I mean, of course, package style equipment is the easiest to work on, in my opinion, because you have less issues to deal with. But unfortunately, sometimes split systems, like what you see in general residential systems, for many reasons end up being more convenient. Package units are usually big, unsightly. They can go on the roof. Here in California, you'll see a lot on the roof in the older communities. It's rare that you see a package unit on the ground in California. Not very often at all. So I like and prefer package units because everything's in one place, but you know, it is what it is. All right, so let me see what I missed right here. It's heat transfer. That's it. Jason Johnson said that. It is. Our job is to move heat. That's all that we're here to do. And to be honest with you, and don't take this the wrong way, majority of our job is just cleaning equipment so that way it can move the heat properly. I mean, we have to keep it clean. We have to keep the coils clean, you know, but all we're doing is relocating heat from one place to another, essentially, right? That's all that we're doing here. All right. So try not to let things get ahead of you. Remember, when you're in a frustrating call, when you're in over your head and things are going crazy and you're frustrated and you're angry, take a chill pill, step back for a minute, think about it, and just remember, break it down, simplify it. It's just moving heat. Okay. You know, start methodically going through it and thinking, okay, this happens because of this happens because of that, and you'll work your way through the problem. Okay. I'm not, you know, the best service technician out there at all, okay? I make a lot of mistakes just like everybody else. I just try to learn from them. And again, I try to remember that whole step back and look at the big picture thing. When I talk about that, guys, the whole big picture diagnoses, of course, I'm talking to my service techs, and of course, I'm preaching it to you guys too. But I still have to remind myself of that too. There's times, man, on a Friday night when I'm working late and I don't want to look at the big picture. I don't want to be thorough. I just want to, you know, just slap a belt on it and walk away and ignorance is bliss kind of a thing, you know, but I have to remind myself all the time. You know, you guys actually keep me accountable because half the time I have so many videos that I've started that never finished, right? So I film almost everything I do. And then sometimes I decide it's not worth a video or not. It just goes in my hard drive and I save it for a rainy day. But so I almost film everything, and I always have to catch myself like, no, you can't take a shortcut here because you're filming this. You have to be thorough. So you guys help me to look at the big picture all the time too. Okay. So, while we're talking about the big picture stuff, let's talk about walking around with blinders on. Okay. Man, the Coke nose is starting super early today. So this happens, right? It's so easy for us sometimes to just have tunnel vision when we go into these stores, right? And to a certain extent, tunnel vision isn't a bad thing, but you know, we go on the roof and, you know, we're there to fix an AC and we can hear these funny things going on across the roof. You can hear a motor going bad. You can, you know, there's all this stuff. And sometimes we just go in there with tunnel vision and don't look at anything else, right? If your company permits you to do this, you guys want to take the blinders off and pay attention on the roof. Now, the customer may not approve it. Maybe you're not going to fix it that night, but look at everything. Okay, guys, trust your gut. I do this all the time where, you know, I hear something. Actually, in one of my recent videos, I just did it with where the thermostat kicked my butt and the blower assembly blew apart. I heard a funny noise, but I didn't really investigate it. I just kept focusing on what I was focusing on. And I was not incorrect in my diagnosis of a potentially bad thermostat wire because it was acting like that. But had I listened to myself when I heard that funny noise of the blower motor turning on and off, then I might have found that before I went down the rabbit hole and spent an extra 45 minutes, you know, troubleshooting something to find out that we had a bad indoor blower assembly. Okay. So it happens to me too, but we just have to remember, like, take the blinders off, look at everything, listen to everything. I tell people all the time, just did an interview with a new guy. You know, he's applying to come to work with me, and he just sat down and we had an interview. And I told him one of my biggest pet peeves is, I'm going to kick my wife's butt if she adjusted the thermostat. Nope, she didn't. Okay. Thank you. I'm not mad at my wife anymore. I thought she adjusted the thermostat, but she didn't. So one of my biggest pet peeves is headphones when you're on the roof. I can't handle headphones. They're in my company handbook. No headphones allowed unless you're using it as a Bluetooth device. Because when you go on a roof with headphones on, unless you need them for hearing protection in a motor room or something like that, but when you go on a roof with headphones on, you're ignoring everything else up on that roof so you can listen to music. I would be okay with like a little job site radio. I'm fine with that because you can still hear things around you. But when you have earbuds in your ears and you're up on the roof working, you know, you're ignoring everything else that's going on up there. You're ignoring sounds, noises, different things that could potentially alert you of bad things happening around you and stuff. So I am not a fan of people using headphones on the job site unless they're being used for hearing protection. So, all right. Let me look at the chat and see what I missed. What is the worst that I have ever gotten hurt? Luckily, I've never really gotten hurt. So I'm super thankful for that. I sprained my ankle one time, not at work, and that's about the most of it. So I've been super lucky in that fact, okay? I did fall off a roof one time, and I was so fortunate. I've talked about this before, but I was climbing a ladder, one-handing it. I had my torch caddy in my other hand, and I was going up, you know, one-handing like I shouldn't be doing. And I went to go grab the top rung, and I missed it, and I fell off the ladder. My torch caddy dropped. I fell down. I landed on something really soft, and what happened was there was a giant chain link roof cage over the back dock of the restaurant, and I fell into the chain link fence and landed on it like a hammock. Right next to me was a giant steel pole sticking up right next to my head that I could have hit and hurt myself. It was that point that I realized I need to stop being in such a rush, and I could have gotten very hurt, if not died. I mean, fallen off a roof, you know? So it's not worth trying to be Superman. It's not worth trying to show people that you can do everything, man. Got to be smart about our jobs because I'm going to be old one day. I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be broken. You know, I need to take care of my body. So I have slowed down dramatically. Try to rope as much as possible. No more being Superman as much as possible. You know, it's too easy and it happens in the blink of an eye. So, all right, let me get into here and see what I'm missing. Yeah, I see my buddy Ralph's in here, and he says he still throws things when he gets frustrated. You know what? I did that for a long time. I still have some anger issues where, sometimes my wife, she doesn't quite understand it. And I've gone to the doctor for anger issues and stuff. But man, I get so much satisfaction out of breaking something. And just when I'm angry, just smashing something with my fists. Now, while it be stupid and it's not the greatest way to, as I'm breaking things, like, I mean, something silly. Like one time I got pissed off at my printer. I think that's my second printer behind me right there because it wasn't working. And I just smashed it like right on the ground. And I freaked my wife out because she was sitting next to me and didn't expect it. And I was just pissed. It's like I need to stop snapping like that and try to control it a little bit better and not scare the crap out of my family. But yeah, I've thrown things before many times. So, all right, let's see what else we got going on in here. Let's see. I already answered that question. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that super chat. I think it's Kobach. Really appreciate that, bud. All right, let's see what would cause a system to have 3 leak holes in 3 separate parts of the system. Frank J.F. Guan. Well, Frank, I mean, it really depends, but it could be corrosion from multiple things causing leaks. I would guess corrosion for the most part, but refrigerant leaks don't really happen on their own. It's usually a symptom of an improper braze joint and or some sort of chemical reaction on the system. So here in the restaurants, we see it a lot where most of our refrigerant leaks are on the evaporator circuits, right? In the evaporator coils. And it's because of the things they store in the refrigerators. They have a lot of acids, citric acids, different things like that. They become airborne and they attack the copper. Think about it like this, guys. The Statue of Liberty is made out of copper, right? But you know how it's that green color? Because it's slowly, that's corrosion, right? That's the salt and everything attacking the copper, making it that green color. Our evaporators and all of our refrigerators are made out of copper. You'll actually start to see that green crap attack the copper and it starts to turn all kinds of fancy rainbow colors, right? But it looks interesting, but it's really corroding it away, and it's because there's corrosive things in the air that are slowly attacking that copper. So as far as what causes 3 leaks in a system at the same time, it's hard to say. I've talked about this before, but I had a customer that I can talk about it because they don't exist anymore. It was a GameWorks, a video game arcade place, right? And they had like restaurants and bars. It was huge. And they called me because they had a drain plugged up on one of their regions. So I blew out the drain, and then like 2 weeks later, the drain was plugged up again. And what it was they were the yeast from the beer. They were pouring it down the drains, and it was just plugging up the drains. Yeast will do that, right? It has bacterial growth and all that crap. So it kept plugging up the drains. So the customer got a brilliant idea, and they figured out how to fix this yeast problem plugging up the drains. What they did was they took a pan, they filled the pan with bleach, and then set it in the box and just let the bleach sit there and be airborne inside the refrigerator. Mind you, this was a brand new refrigerator. So about, 3 weeks goes by. I don't get any more service calls, maybe a month or something like that. I don't get any more service calls. But then all of a sudden I get a service call and it says the reach-in's not working anymore. So I go over there, come to find out it doesn't have any refrigerant in it. And I'm like, what the heck? This is a brand new refrigerator. I open up the evaporator and it's completely corroded. Just like, what the heck is this? The bleach that he put in there became airborne. The chlorine in it started attacking everything and just disintegrating the entire thing. And they had to replace the entire refrigerator because it was trash. The whole thing was junk because they took it upon themselves to put that pan full of bleach in there because they thought, hey, this is a great idea. They solved the plugging up drains problem, but they put a contaminant in there that started attacking everything and just disintegrating the entire box. So all right, let me see what else we got going on in here. Is it possible to diagnose a unit low on charge without gauges? Mr. Green, well, yes. It is possible, but you would have to have a lot of information. If you properly benchmark the system, right? If you did a startup on it when you first installed it, you measured all the temperatures on all the refrigeration lines, you noted it down, and you have a logbook, then theoretically, yes, you could not have to apply service gauges, and you could look at the temperatures of everything and make a pretty good assumption that it might be low on refrigerant based off of the temperatures and the lack of performance. So it is possible, but I wouldn't say it's possible unless you have all that data. So I'll give you an example. Well, one of the refrigerator manufacturers. I can't remember if it's True Manufacturing or Delfield. One of them, because they have these new R290 refrigerators. They don't have service ports coming from the factory. You have to put them on, but they want you. They have all the information. I think it is Delfield. They actually have all the information, and if you just call them with the temperatures of the discharge line, the liquid line, the suction line, they tell you where to measure it. They can tell you whether or not you need to put your service gauges on it based off of all the information that they have, because they've done extensive testing on their equipment. So it is possible, okay? But eventually, when you go to repair it, you're going to need to put service gauges on it and then diagnose it appropriately. All right, let's see what this is. Best advice for a technician transitioning from residential to commercial. Just brush up on your electrical skills and remember to listen to the new service technicians. It's the same concept from residential to commercial. It's just bigger systems, higher voltages, bigger equipment, and that's pretty much it. It's still an air conditioner. It's still a refrigerator. It's not really much different. You're still just moving heat from one place to another, just on a bigger scale typically, okay? And the control systems, when you get into commercial and industrial, they definitely get more complex as far as energy management systems and things like that. So, all right, let's see what I missed in here. I already answered that one. Yeah, if you guys have questions, put them in caps lock, okay? What items have I thrown off the roof out of frustration? Never thrown anything off the roof out of frustration. So, Delfield wants temperatures before you tap in the system. Bear Down said that. Yeah, that's correct. Because Delfield has done a great job of logging all the information so that way they can give you a better understanding. Remember something. When you guys call technical support and you talk to whoever it is, insert name of manufacturer here, write down everything you can and save it. Save it in your phone, whatever. It can save you a service call or a phone call to them next time. If you ask them, hey, what's the refrigerant pressure supposed to be for this certain refrigerator? Write it down and store it. So that way the next time, if you're like me and you work on a lot of the same stuff, you don't need to keep calling them to ask them the service, what pressures they want, because it's right here. So, all right, let me get to my list of things. All right, we're good there. All right. So, I kind of talked about it, but take the blinders off when we go on the roof. Okay. Again, keep the office in the loop, keep your service manager in the loop, but look at everything, bring it to the customer's attention. You can generate work that way. Okay. And that keeps you busy through the slow times. So I had an old video, probably from 6 months to a year ago, where I worked on a Linux package unit that the unit was tripping a breaker, and it was out in the really hot ambient out in the desert. And I changed an indoor blower motor on it because it had bad bearings. This was probably a 5 horsepower blower motor, and it had failed bearings on it. And I diagnosed that the bearings are what caused the breaker to trip. So the question is, why did I not change the bearings in that motor? I get so many questions from people asking me, why did you change that motor? You could have saved so much money if you would have just changed the bearings, okay? Bottom line, time is money, okay? I don't stock bearings for motors. I don't even stock those big motors, okay? I'm not going to go, and that again, understand something. I don't really explain everything in my videos, okay? That location that I worked on is out in the Southern California desert, okay? It's about 2 hours away from my shop. I got to think about things. Okay, yes, I could order bearings, but what happens if I take the bearings out and there's a problem with the motor? Now I've lost time because now I still have to return with a motor. I have to leave, go back to the shop, come back, when I can just quote a replacement motor and be done with it, okay? So it's always about time and money, essentially. Also, another really important thing is it's not worth callbacks for me. Callbacks are the biggest enemy. Callbacks happen, but they're horrible because they ruin your reputation. If you have a consistent amount of callbacks, then customers start questioning whether or not you know what you're doing. And if I can eliminate those, I try to, okay? Of course, I don't want to sell the customer things they don't need, but at the same time, I'm not going to change bearings in a motor because it's just not practical for me to do so. I don't have the tools. Hell, I've never even changed bearings in a motor. I certainly understand how you could do it, but it'd be stuff that you'd have to get, and it's not really something I'm going to deal with. What happens if there was damage to that motor, you know? There was a video that I did a couple months back, and I changed a condenser fan motor because the wires had ripped off like really close to the motor, and You know, people still ask me to today, why did you change that motor? You could have just spliced the wires and it would have been fine. Well, again, time is money. And I don't always explain everything, but in that situation, that had an aftermarket condenser fan motor, and I don't like the aftermarket condenser fan motors because the stack on them is too high. The blade doesn't sit in the shroud right. They cause high head pressure. So any excuse I have to change an aftermarket motor to an OEM factory motor, I try to do so. So in that situation, the wires wrapped around the motor, they cut the wires off. I could have tried to splice the wires, but it was easy enough to go get a new motor, blade, and capacitor and call it a day and be done with it. Okay, so I tend to do that whenever possible. All right. Did they... Oh, that's too funny. I clicked the dog barking thing from the overtime show because I set my phone down. My bad. Have I retrofitted ECM motors on walk-in equipments? No, I have not retrofitted. I've gone away from ECM motors and put PSCs back in. What is my favorite brand of air conditioner or package unit? Well, first off, let's say that it's not necessarily that I think they're the best brand in the world. I love working on Linux commercial package units, and I kind of like working on the Carrier commercial package units. Now, do I think they're the best units out there? Not necessarily, but I'm super comfortable working on them because I work on them all the time. You put me in front of a York Predator and I start to get frustrated because I'm not super comfortable with them. Yes, I understand how they work and I can fix them, but I don't work on them every day, so I have to stop and think about it. So it's not that I'm endorsing Carrier or Linux over York or Train or whatever. It's just that I'm super comfortable working on Carrier and Linux the most. Okay, so I would say they were fine. My favorite ones. Did they finally fix that building that I worked on with the thermostat hanging in the duct? No, that restaurant has like 3 units that have thermostats hanging in the duct. So no. Could I go through my liquid injection troubleshooting sequence? Chris Cooley. Well, I mean, I don't know a whole lot. It depends on what you're asking, okay? I deal with some liquid injection, like the DTC valves on the low temperature refrigeration scroll compressors. That is liquid injection. There's really not a whole lot of troubleshooting to those. You know, there's a sensing bulb in the top of the compressor. When it hits a certain temperature, I don't remember what it is, but you can find it on Copeland's data. But when it hits a certain temperature, it opens the valve and it feeds. The valve has a strainer on it. If you install it after the fact, you can always put a ball valve on it. But I mean, there's really not a lot of troubleshooting. I've never really had a failed DTC valve. I can't think. Maybe I might have changed one of them or something, but I change them whenever I change the compressors. But I mean, I don't really have a whole lot of advice for troubleshooting them because I really haven't had much failures on them. So feel free to send me an email if I didn't answer your question enough, Chris. So you saw compressors exploded at the terminals. Why is that? Tamiko said that. Well, it sounds like you had a terminal vent possibly. So there was an electrical arc inside the compressor and it blew the terminals out. I mean, that happens. It just depends. Majority of the time the compressors are murdered. So something caused it to go bad, whether it be refrigerant issue, refrigerant coming back, flooding the compressor. I don't know. But that's the typical things you're going to see on a terminal vent is because of a direct short inside the compressor and it's going to vent the charge out the terminal. Let's see what else we got in here. Have I ever had to replace 3 compressors in the same day? I can't say that I have. Who puts thermostats in the ductwork? You know, basically PM Godfrey. I think that's how you say your name. What they're asking me about is a restaurant that had an energy management system and the energy management system was not working properly. So it was a really hot weekend and the quick solution was to take a thermostat and drop it down into the ductwork so it was sensing the return air temperature. And that was a temporary solution. And then I gave the restaurant all the information so that we can order the proper equipment to fix the energy management system. And they've yet to fix it. And it's been a couple years. So I still have thermostats, multiples, hanging down in the ductwork. A lot of people in those videos too asked me, well, why didn't I just mount the thermostat in the control section of the AC and then mount a return sensor down in the ductwork, which sounds like it would have been a really smart idea. In my situation, the location that I was working at was out in the Coachella Valley where it easily gets to 120 degrees outside ambient temperature. So imagine what it is inside the control cabinet of that equipment. If I tried to mount a digital thermostat in over 120 degree ambient conditions, that thermostat would fail. So that's why I mounted it down in the return airstream, so that way it had the building air coming back, cooling off the thermostat. It's not an ideal situation. It was supposed to be a temporary solution, but you know, I gave the customer the information and they have not chosen to replace the energy management system. Long story short, the EMS system is an old Siemens system, and they don't want to spend the money, and they want to change it. They've been changing over to a new, cheaper, not even an energy management, it's just an internet thermostat by Bayweb. It's much cheaper, but you know, it's on them. I have nothing to do with that. They buy their own EMS system, so I sold them the thermostat temporarily. Let's see. You mostly see Train, York, and Carrier units, rarely see a Linux. So Jason Johnson, I would imagine that you might be a little bit more flustered on a Linux than I would, because I work on them all the time. And it's, again, just pointing out the fact, it's not that I think one, I mean, I do have an opinion on which ones suck. I'm not going to call them out on here, but I mean, you know, they all do the same process. It's really all about their control strategy that really starts to mess you up and confuse you. So, all right, let me see what I missed. I saw a question here I wanted to get to. On semi-hermetic water-cooled compressors, what are ideal oil sight glass levels? Halfway. Ooh, man, it's been a long time. I have to look that up, Danny. I typically want to see the oil sight glass when it's operating. Gosh, I can't remember. It's, you know, some of these things, it's so easy to look it up online that I don't even remember it. I think you want to see it around the halfway or just below the halfway when it's operating, I think. But don't quote me on that. Just Google it. Copeland semi-hermetic oil sight glass levels, and it'll come up, guys. It's so easy. All right. Have you ever had to replace three? No, I already answered that question. No, I haven't had to replace three compressors. What caused contactors to burn? Or just bad ambient conditions. You know, constant arcing, turning on and off. They get a little bit dirty, then they start to get hotter and they start to arc, and then they start to burn. Contactors are, you know, they have a rated life, and if they're in a bad ambient area where there's a lot of sand blowing around and stuff like that, that rated life's going to diminish dramatically and be very minimal. So let's see what else. Let me see what I missed here. Jaden. I see Ralph talking to Jaden right now. Yeah, Jaden, put your question in caps lock, bud. It's already lost up in there, so put your question in caps lock and I'll try to get to it, okay? Sometimes you got to keep reposting it or you can try to email me. Is Dawn dish soap a good product for leak searching? It would also make a good degreaser. I have used Dawn dish detergent for degreasing things before. The one thing I will say, if you try to use it as a coil cleaner, you're going to have a bubble party and bubbles are going to blow everywhere. It's so hard to get liquid dish detergent out of your equipment. So when you wash it and wash it and wash it, especially on microchannel condensers, even if you use like the correct coil cleaner on microchannel condensers, you're going to have a dang bubble party because that crap is just going to blow stuff everywhere. I've never used it as a leak detector. I certainly know you could. I prefer using the Big Blue by Refrigeration Technologies because it's completely designed for it. There's no bubbles when you spray it, so it's just a steady stream, and that's just my jam to use. Do I use drop-in replacement refrigerants? HVACR San Diego. Okay, so I have used replacement refrigerants in the past for sure. Okay, let me look right here. Oh, great. Yeah. I have used replacement refrigerants before, but you know, it really depends. Currently, right now, I'm not using any R22 replacements. I keep bringing it up to my customers and give them the option, and they have chosen not to have me go with alternative refrigerants. But I have used alternative refrigerants for other stuff in the past, okay? The one thing I'm going to say is whenever you're choosing and using an alternative refrigerant, you want to make sure you talk to and or read the compressor's manufacturer's literature on converting refrigerants, okay? Figure out what they want you to do, and then also reach out to the refrigerant manufacturer and ask them what they want you to do, okay? Because there's a lot of different things you need to do. Don't just trust what the supply house guys say to do with said refrigerants, okay? Let me see. with any of the refrigerants, if you guys have any questions, currently my phone's going off right now with service calls and stuff, so people are texting me. If you have any refrigerant related questions, what I want you to do is reach out to my buddy Ralph. He's always willing to help you guys out. I just put his email in there right now. You guys can email him and he can help you out, okay? Do me a favor, if you guys haven't already, Sporlan has their final supermarket webinar of their series that they've been doing coming up this Thursday on 5/20 at 1 p.m. Central Time. There's a link from the moderator bot posting it right now. I'm going to post it in here too. Go register. It should be a great seminar. This one's going to be on cool refrigeration stuff, and they're going to let me click this off. They're going to be talking about CO2 refrigerants. So check it out and register for the webinar. I just posted the link in there. Have I ever had anything on a package unit blow up in my face? I can't say that I have, but let me see what I'm missing. I already answered that question. What's the worst TEV brand? I wouldn't say a worse TEV brand. I mean, first off, I don't like to talk negatively about people, so I don't want to call anybody out. I'm a huge fan of Sporlan products. If installed properly, they last a very long time. So let's just leave it at that, okay? All right, let me see what I missed. What do liquid injection valves do to help in terms of the compressor? A liquid injection valve, like a DTC valve on a Copeland scroll compressor, it's going to drop the discharge temperature of the compressor. But more importantly, it gets compressor cooling going on in the sensitive parts of the compressor so that you don't have issues. So a DTC valve or a liquid injection valve essentially is just an expansion valve, and it's metering the refrigerant into the right spot of the compressor to help drop the discharge temperatures and help to cool the compressor off from overheating issues. You tend to see that on really low temperature stuff, so that's why you'll see DTC valves or liquid injection on most of the low temp refrigeration compressors. What earpiece do I use for my phone? I use a Plantronics Voyager or something or other. So in a recent video, I thought I was going to have to change a thermostat wire. And a couple people reached out to me and said, hey, why change the whole thermostat wire if you just have one broken wire in the jacket? Why not just use a leftover wire that's not being used and just abandon the one that's broken? I have certainly done that many times, and it can get you by. But I have to ask you a question. If you have a thermostat wire and you find out that one of the 8 wires in that jacket is bad, what caused that wire to fail? Do you really think that the wire just went bad inside the jacket without rubbing up against something or anything like that? Or do you think that maybe it's rubbing up against something and only one of them shorted out, but the other ones are almost ready to short out? So when it comes to that kind of stuff, when possible, I try to replace the entire thermostat wire, because what happens if the other wires start going bad too? Of course, if the customer wants to just, do what we have to do to get it going, sometimes we'll do that. But I'll definitely leave a disclaimer and explain everything to them. So whenever possible, someone had asked me about using AX belts versus an A series belt, or a cogged belt versus a regular V belt. Okay. I prefer to use cogged belts or AX or BX belts. Those are the only ones that I use, really, A's and B's. I don't do anything bigger. But I prefer to use those over a standard V belt because I find that they last longer. I find that the pulleys last longer. I know there's a bunch of technical documentation out there to say that the cogged belts actually reduce heat and wear and tear on the equipment and stuff like that. So yes, I do try to use cogged belts as much as possible. So Danny had asked me a question about split row condensers, and he said, hey, why is it that there's split row condensers on these package units? It seems very inefficient. In yes and no. Okay. Basically, the reason why they put split row or double stacked condensers, right, that you have to split, take the top off to clean them, is because they are trying to reduce the footprint of the equipment. Okay. They need all the condensing space, but they don't want to make the condenser 7 feet tall and 8 feet long. So they double stack the condensers. Let's just say it, make it easy for you guys. If you're working on anything over 4 tons, okay, maybe even 3 tons these days, but if you're working on anything over 4 tons, whether it be residential or commercial, majority of the time, it's going to have a double row condenser. Even residential air conditioners, like my house has a 4-ton out behind my house, and it has a split row condenser. So if you pull the top off of it, you're going to see 2 condensers right next to each other inside there. So if you wash one, you're really only washing into the other condenser. So you have to understand that when you're doing that. Michael and many other people asked also in my recent video where my condenser was really messed up, how come I didn't comb the condenser with a condenser coil comb? If you guys don't already know, there's a special comb that you can use to straighten out the fins on condensers. And in fact, I have combed, and this was on my kitchen AC unit that wasn't working, I have combed every one of those condensers. And once you comb a condenser, to be honest with you, it's literally almost done. Like, every time you wash it, it's going to fold back down again, and the condenser starts to become really thin, the aluminum fin. So once you comb a condenser, it's typically on its way out. You can usually straighten it, but if someone doesn't be careful with the hose and they bend it down again, it's just going to bend easier every single time. But yes, I have combed those fins before, and they're basically, you know, you can't straighten them out anymore. There's so much damage done to it that you can only do so much. So, oh, this is a good one. So Brandon had asked me a question. He said, hey, what is my opinion on using the Viper Venom packs on the Lennox condensers? Because he read some information where Lennox said you could only use water on their condensers. Okay, so with that being said, there is some truth in that. And he's talking about microchannel condensers, okay? Lennox has an Environ coil. It's a microchannel condenser. And they do have some documentation that says you should typically only use water. But I will challenge that and say that Lennox, if you guys Google search, all right, it's super easy. Just Google search Lennox Environ coil. There'll be 2 videos that come up. Both of them are from Lennox Industries, and they have actually said that it's okay to use a certain brand coil cleaner. They actually say Triple D on their Environ coils. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is Lennox does acknowledge the fact that if you're working in restaurants, they said, you know, greasy condensers, sometimes you do have to use a coil cleaner. They approve, you know, the Environ cleaner, I mean the Triple D cleaner. So I take it upon myself. I like the Viper cleaners. I have not gotten approval from Lennox saying that I could use that cleaner, but I know that the yellow Venom pack is non-corrosive. It's safe on microchannel coils, and it works perfect for me. So I go out on a limb and choose to use that coil cleaner, okay? Someone had asked me about where they could learn about working on economizers. So you can download some YouTube videos. There's a few good ones. I showed this recently on an HVAC overtime show. I'll show it again. This is a Honeywell technical reference manual. All you guys got to do is Google this, okay? Design and application guide for Honeywell economizer controls. Google this. There's a PDF you can download. I ordered these many years ago, ordered a bunch of them for all my techs. But these things break down every economizer control that Honeywell makes. All the way from, and they break down the operation. They explain why you should be bringing fresh air into the building, how the controllers work. I'm trying to find a section right now where they show the different controls. But they show all the old school controls all the way up to the new controls too. So let me see if I can find this right here. So they break it down with all the different controls in here. The OEM specific ones. They show you the new Honeywell Jade controller in the back. They explain how they work and everything. So download this manual if you want to learn about economizers. It will help you tremendously, and it'll explain everything, okay? All right. So speaking of economizers, why is it that in almost every one of my videos, the economizers are bypassed? Okay. I say this a lot, and I'll say it again. It really comes down to the customer. The customer is king, and majority of the customers do not see the return on investment for an economizer. The sensors fail, the actuators fail, the logic boards fail, and they typically don't want to repair them because they can still have an air conditioner. It's just not going to bring in the right amount of fresh air and different things. So it really has a lot to do with the customers. And I'll say, for an instance, you know, economizers have outdoor air sensors and indoor air sensors. And unfortunately, these customers have a lot of corrosive stuff, whether it be outside or inside the building, circulating through those sensors and causes them to fail a lot too. So it really has to do with the conditions in the building that causes sensors to fail and different stuff like that. So the customers just typically don't want to fix them. So, all right. Let's see what we got. How do I air balance commercial units? Well, I am not certified in air balance, so you know, I have some basic understandings of air balance. I typically know that we want our buildings to be ever so slightly positive. You know, you want to be careful about having a negative building and a positive kitchen, because then you could transfer smells and different things from the kitchen. So it's kind of tricky. It's not really something I can explain on a live stream. So feel free to send me an email. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about it. Do I have any experience with the KE2 temp plus valve control? No, I've used the temp plus defrost controllers, but never the valve controls. Ralph, thanks, bud. We'll see you later, okay? Everybody, if you guys have questions, feel free to send them to Ralph, okay? What's my setup to clean coils without water? I don't have a setup, Billy Talent. My customers all have water at the location. So I do have a pressure washer, but I mean, even still, you're going to need water for that too. So let's see. Residential York, best coil cleaning product, thanks. Again, if you're asking for coil cleaning products, you look at the refrigeration technologies, Venom packs, and different products they have. That's what I would recommend on those. So let's see. Have I hung a thermostat zone sensor in the duct in the past, like in my recent video? Yeah. I mean, it's not the end of the world to have a zone sensor in the duct. I've seen that a lot, actually. You kind of know what AC control board does, but please help you on the pins for the 64. I don't know the pins, bud. Sorry. I don't know what that is. Let me see what else we got in here. God, my nose is driving me nuts right now. Yeah, I did. We did talk about the fin comb, Michael. So oftentimes in my videos, I'll talk about it again with the fin combs. Once you start combing a fin, I said once, but even twice. Okay, once you straighten out the fins on a condenser once or twice, what you're going to start to notice is it actually will damage the condenser to the point that once people start washing it, the fins are just going to fold back down. So in my recent video, you know, I was asked about why I didn't use a fin comb on it, and I actually have before, and I didn't explain it in the video, but I've straightened those fins out as best as possible to the point that the sections that are damaged are permanently damaged, and there's no straightening those out anymore. So I have used the fin comb, and I do use a fin comb quite often. It's just a matter of once you do it, again, you need to understand that the next person that comes in and washes those coils, if he sprays direct water on those fins, they're instantly going to bend, because once they get bent, they're damaged and they're done. So that's the reason why I didn't comb out the fins anymore, was because I've already done it, and judging by the look of it, I could tell that it wasn't going to get any better than it already was. So, all right. Let me see what else. Do I see digital scroll compressors in restaurant refrigeration equipment? No, not yet. I've seen one digital scroll compressor in a train package unit, a big old fancy 15-ton train package unit, but I'm not seeing them in refrigeration yet at all. Some digital scrolls could be good as long as they had the right power conditioning, for sure. So do I like the new refrigeration technologies pump sprayer for the coil cleaner? I love the new refrigeration technologies pump sprayer, for sure. It is awesome. It has the two little tips on it, one for spraying foaming coil cleaners and then one for a direct stream. So it's awesome. Have I ever had a scare taking or putting back on the disconnect? I mean, you know, no, I can't say that I've ever had something blow up in my face doing a disconnect, but I definitely am always cautious about it, for sure. So, so did I get a hire? No, I have not hired anybody at this time yet. So, let me see what else we got in here. What am I missing? I'm still going through resumes and stuff and considering different ones. All right. What do we have? All right. Well, put a few more questions in there, guys, because I am going to have to wrap it up. I think I got a service call I got to go do. So let's get through these. Any more questions? I want to get to them. Yeah, if you have things that I've missed, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. All right. So a couple things coming up. I got the new Vito. I've had it actually for a couple weeks, the Vito rolling backpack. I had that thing a couple weeks ago, but honestly, I haven't even loaded it up yet. So I am going to be doing a tool review video on that. That's on my HVACR Tools channel. There'll be a link in the show notes of this video for the HVACR Tools channel. So that'll be coming up. We're going to have some videos dropping this week and next week with some new field piece products with the new vacuum pump and leak detectors. So you guys will see those dropping on my normal channel. And then maybe in the future, we'll do it on the tool review channel too. I've been using the Field Piece vacuum pump and leak detector for a while now, and they're awesome. So wait till you guys see them. They got some really cool new features. So if I have an AC unit that runs with 100% fresh air, do I need to adjust the valve for superheat? I mean, no, not necessarily, but you need to understand something. If you're using an AC for 100% outside air that wasn't designed for it, then you're going to have issues in the hot ambient conditions. In my situation, I've got an AC that we're doing that with, and it's basically ruined the oil in each one of those compressors because they're running way outside of their operating envelope all the time, bringing in 120-degree air in the summertime, and they're not meant to have that kind of a load. So if there's a lot of things you need to do. In a perfect world, you get a properly designed system. At a minimum, if you are using 100% outside air and the system has a TXV, you need to put a pressure limiting power head on that expansion valve. So if you have a Sporlan valve, you need to put a pressure limiting power head so that way it doesn't let the suction pressure go too high to kill that compressor. But even still, over time, it's going to kill the compressor eventually, okay? So understand that. Can't find Viper sprayer anywhere. Tell a TrueTech to up inventory. You need 2 stat. Yeah, someone emailed me saying that they were having a hard time. I'll have to reach out to Refrigeration Technologies and ask them what's up about that too. So let's see. What was the thermal tool I used to see the refrigerant in the receiver? I use the FLIR 1 Pro, and it's a plug-in for my Samsung phone. That's what I use as my thermal imaging camera. What's the most outrageous installation I've ever seen? Jesus Tapia. I have still operating. I have a video on my channel from many years ago where I went to go do a service call on a split system kitchen AC that someone installed in a restaurant. And it's a 5-ton AC with one single 12-inch supply duct coming off of the plenum. One single 12-inch supply duct running about 75 feet with about 2, 4, 6 drops off of it. So a single 12-inch supply vent flex duct ran for a 5-ton AC. That was a pretty silly one when I figured that one out. When I was like, holy crap, the airflow in this thing is ridiculous. That was a pretty interesting one. Let's see what else we got in here. Live stream my service call tonight. Oh, I don't know. We'll see. How do I like the new pump? I love that new pump. So is there a split that I look for on a package unit on a service call? Temperature difference. Zach, the temperature split is going to change based off of a bunch of conditions. So sometimes you might see 18 degrees. Sometimes you might see 24 degrees. I mean, it just depends on the indoor and outdoor conditions, and that's going to affect the needed temperature split. Now, coming up in the trade, I was always taught 20 degrees, but I've since learned that it's never always going to be 20 degrees. It changes depending on the ambient conditions and the indoor conditions. I would highly suggest looking into more information on how to properly determine what your temperature differential should be from the supply to the return. You can also use some of the softwares like Measure Quick. You can input some information and it'll give you what your expected temperature split should be based off of the indoor conditions. So it makes it really easy for you. Let me see what else we got in here. All right. What's the service call? I don't know yet. Oh, I think it's a walk-in freezer down is the service call, but I need to go through my phone and check it out, see if someone else is taking it for me or if I'm going to have to take it. When do I do lives? I go live every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time right here. So, and Friday evenings with my buddies on the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel. There's a link in the show notes of this video. I am going to go ahead and wrap this one up, guys, because I got to figure out this situation and find out if I need to handle this service call. I really, really appreciate you guys making it in here. Thanks so much for all the support. You guys are awesome. Please smash the thumbs up button on the way out. We have 267 people in here, 164 likes. Get that number up if you guys could, please. I'd really, really appreciate it on your way out. I'm going to go ahead and end this stream, cue up the outro music, and we will catch you guys on the next one.